Have you ever heard the story of Ronald Reed, the janitor who passed away in 2014 with $8 million sitting in savings and investments? Yes, you heard that right. Janitor, 8 million. And here's the twist. He didn't win the lottery. He didn't inherit a pile of cash. And he wasn't secretly a tech founder in disguise. He just did something almost painfully unsexy. He saved steadily for decades, and then let compounding quietly work like a snowball rolling downhill. That's the big lesson right there. Your behavior with money often matters more than your IQ. You don't need a Harvard diploma. You don't need a corner office on Wall Street. You can build real wealth by doing ordinary things consistently and not sabotaging yourself when emotions flare up. As Morgan Housel says, financial success isn't really a hard science. It's a soft skill. How you behave matters more than what you know. So spend the next 10 to 15 minutes with me, and you might sharpen that soft skill a bit. This is a top 5 takeaway summary of The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. Takeaway number 1, pay the price. Let's say you want a new watch. Not just any watch, but a wow watch. The kind of watch that makes your friends raise an eyebrow and makes the person you're dating think, okay, interesting. So you stroll into a store, try a few on, admire your reflection, and you're ready to walk out feeling like a celebrity. Now you've got 2 options. Option A, you pay. Option B, you grab it and sprint out the door because, hey, you've been doing cardio. I'm going to assume you choose option A, even if your 5K time is impressive. Why? Because you understand something basic. Nice things come with a price tag. There's a fee, a cost, an entrance ticket. Investing works the exact same way. People love talking about high returns, but they often pretend the returns just show up like a friendly delivery guy at your door. They don't. High returns usually demand that you pay a fee, and that fee is typically volatility. If you've watched enough investing content, you've probably heard a familiar theme. Long-term outperformance often comes from owning great businesses, and sometimes owning them in a somewhat concentrated way, with a few exceptions depending on style. The moment you concentrate, your performance gets a personality, and that personality is dramatic. A concentrated portfolio will jump around. It will feel amazing in the good times and feel like a horror movie in the bad times. That roller coaster is not a bug. It's the price of admission. Here's the reality check. If you can't handle a week where your net worth drops 20% because 2 big holdings report earnings below expectations, you probably shouldn't build your plan around maximum returns, because the higher the potential reward, the higher the fee tends to be. Let's play a thought experiment. Imagine you could see Netflix's future 10 years ago. You were early, you were right, you invested a big chunk of your net worth into the stock, and today you'd be very rich. But the real question is not could you predict it. The real question is could you pay the price to stay in the game? Netflix didn't go up in a straight line like a motivational poster. Along the way, it suffered several serious drops. In 2011, Netflix famously lost customers and the stock fell around 80% from its peak in the months that followed. Picture that, 80%. Your portfolio would look absolutely awful. What would you tell your spouse, your kids? What would it feel like to sit at the dinner table with that number floating in your head, wondering whether you just torpedoed your family's future? Would you still confidently say, "Don't worry everyone, this is fine"? Or would you quietly start Googling how to live in a cardboard box, tips and tricks? That's the emotional price. Even if you're not doing an extreme all-in Netflix approach, you still pay the volatility fee. And even the broad market makes you pay. Let's say you bought an S&P 500 index fund in 1980. You would still face long stretches, something like 13 years combined, where your portfolio is down 20% from its previous high. And you'd still endure periods, roughly 8 months total, where it's down 50%. That is not a small bump. That is a stomach test. Stock market investing is incredible. It's one of the best wealth creation engines available to regular people. But don't fool yourself. It doesn't come free. Every investor pays the price. The question is whether you'll view volatility as a signal to panic
or as the fee you accept in exchange for a brighter future.
Takeaway number 2, never enough.
Here's a funny little quirk of human psychology.
You can give someone a $2 million bonus and they'll be thrilled, right up until they discover the person next to them got $2 million plus $1. Then suddenly they're miserable, like someone stole their lunch money.
Capitalism is excellent at two things: generating wealth and generating envy. Trying to do better than your neighbors, peers, and friends can absolutely fuel ambition. It can push people to work harder, learn more, and build something meaningful. That's the good side. The bad side is that social comparison can trap you in a permanent feeling of "I'm not enough." Because there's always someone ahead. Always. The ladder never ends. Let's talk numbers. To be in the top 1% of income earners in the US, you'd need roughly $500,000 per year. Let's say a highly specialized doctor named Bill earns that. Bill is rich by almost any normal standard. He can drive a nice car, take long vacations to exotic places, outsource chores he finds annoying, and generally live a life most people would call successful. Bill is feeling great until he buys a vacation home in the Hamptons and discovers his neighbor is Stan. Stan is not just in the top 1%. Stan is in the top 1% of the top 1%. He's the CEO of a large public company and earns something like $10 million a year. Now you'd hope Stan would be satisfied, right? Surely $10 million a year buys a little peace of mind. But no. Stan has a childhood friend named Michael Jordan, and Michael is in the top 1% of the top 1% of the top 1%. Compared to a fortune around $2 billion, Stan's mere $10 million salary can suddenly feel small. And does the story stop there? Of course not, because Michael sometimes goes to celebrity parties where Jeff Bezos shows up. Bezos sits in the top 1% of the top 1% of the top 1% of the top 1%, and at one point increased his net worth by something like $75 billion in a single year, landing somewhere around $200 billion. There is always a bigger fish, always. And envy, especially envy mixed with money, has caused people to do extremely dumb things throughout history. Some people lever their portfolios to the sky, desperate to climb the pyramid faster, and then lose everything. Some take insider tips, ruin their reputations, and end up behind bars. Others sacrifice their health, their relationships, and their families in the chase, then wake up one day with money and no one left to share it with. If you keep learning about investing and building good habits, there's a good chance you'll reach a level of financial freedom that many people can only dream about. But you have to decide at some point where enough is. You need a personal rule like, we don't trade what we have and need for what we don't have and don't need, even if that shiny thing looks fun. Because the moment you can't say enough, the game never ends, and you can lose everything chasing an extra lap. Takeaway number 3. Crazy is in the eye of the beholder. At first glance, people seem to do insane things with money. Some blow ridiculous amounts on ridiculous stuff. Others hide cash under the mattress like they're starring in a movie about secret spies. But here's the key. People come from different backgrounds, different childhoods, different parents, different experiences, different education, different luck. All of that creates different values, fears, and priorities. So what looks crazy to you may feel completely logical to someone else. Morgan uses lottery tickets as an example. In the US, the lowest income households spend over $400 per year on lottery tickets, about 4 times more than households in the highest income group. Combine that with another fact. More than a third of Americans can't come up with $400 for an emergency. So wait, are people spending their emergency buffer on lottery tickets? That sounds insane, right? Try stepping into their shoes. Imagine living paycheck to paycheck with little room to breathe. You might have limited education, limited career options, and no easy path to a better life. You can't afford the vacation, the nicer car, the comfortable home. You can't send your kids to college without huge debt. In that world, the lottery ticket is not an investment. It's a small purchase of hope.
It's buying into a dream many others already live.
Suddenly, it looks less like stupidity and more like psychology. So how does this help you as an investor? First, it reminds you that you shouldn't copy someone else's strategy blindly because their goals and fears might not match yours. A billionaire's top priority is often staying rich, not getting rich. That leads to conservative choices. But if you're still building wealth, your risk profile might reasonably be different. Copying a billionaire could be the wrong move for your situation. Second, it helps you say no to stuff outside your circle of competence. Take the whole GameStop drama. If you're not a trader, if that style doesn't fit you, then it's simply not your card to play. Knowing there are different lenses helps you stop chasing every shiny trend and start committing to the path that actually fits your life. Takeaway number 4, peekaboo. What do the Great Depression, World War II, financial crises, and COVID-19 have in common? They shaped society. They shook financial markets. And most importantly, they were incredibly hard to predict in advance. Nassim Taleb calls these kinds of events black swans. The idea is basically, it's an outlier outside normal expectations. It carries huge impact. Afterward, people create stories to explain it as if it was obvious all along. Human nature loves pretending we saw it coming. Yeah, I totally knew that would happen, we say, while ignoring the reality that we didn't. Imagine it's Black Monday, 1987. The market drops almost a fourth in a single day. What would you do? Would you panic sell with the crowd? Or would you somehow stay calm? Maybe even invest more with whatever cash you kept on the sidelines? Here's a fascinating stat. If you invested in an S&P 500 index fund over the past 20 years, but missed just the 4 best market days, your return might be around 164% instead of 291%. That is a massive difference caused by only a handful of days. So what's the lesson? It's often more useful to prepare for disasters you can't foresee than to believe you'll magically predict them and dodge them like a superhero. That means preparing financially, emergency funds, sensible leverage, appropriate diversification, and preparing mentally, expecting scary headlines, accepting that drawdowns happen, and having a plan you can stick to. It also means being skeptical of confident macro forecasts. The things that cause the biggest fear in the future are often the things nobody sees coming anyway. Takeaway number 5, the seduction of pessimism. Let me try something. If I give you a list of reasons the market might crash later this year, like massive government debt, stimulus checks sparking inflation, scary new disease variants, and a couple of ominous charts, you'd probably lean in. You'd feel like you're hearing something insightful, even sophisticated. Pessimism sounds smart. But if I instead tell you things will likely improve over time, pointing to rising life expectancy, cheaper sustainable energy, and exploding computing power, you might shrug. Optimism can sound naive. Why? Daniel Kahneman describes how humans are wired to feel losses more intensely than gains. Threats grab attention. Bad news feels urgent. It's survival instinct. If your ancestors ignored danger, they didn't last long. So our brains treat pessimism like a protective alarm system. There's another reason too. Progress is slow and setbacks are fast. Progress is usually a grind, happening little by little. Setbacks are dramatic. A crash can happen in days. A crisis can unfold in weeks. Tragedy is intense and easy to package into a compelling story. That's why it gets more attention. Optimism, to be honest, requires zooming out. It requires longer time horizons, and longer time horizons feel less exciting because they're less dramatic and harder to feel emotionally. The takeaway: recognize that you're naturally pulled toward pessimism, and don't confuse that pull with wisdom. Be cautious with investment advice that leans heavily on doom. The world is often better than it looks in the headlines, as Hans Rosling would remind us. So, quick recap. You won't get rich in stocks without paying the price of volatility. Envy can wreck your life. Decide what enough means before the game decides for you. What looks crazy might be rational from another perspective, so build a strategy that matches your goals and temperament. Instead of trying to predict disasters, prepare for them mentally and financially so you can survive them. Be careful with advice that feeds pessimism. It's seductive because it speaks to your survival instincts. That's it for today.